right, so we can go ahead and get started. This is our first ever attempt at a podcast. We're going to
Nice.
see how this goes. And I'm sure we're going to tweak the setup and everything a little bit as we go along too, since we can only fit 3 people. Ideally, we wanted 4. But anyhow, we are here with Mike Beatty. The first topic we're going to talk about is condominiums. They're a little bit trickier than someone might think. We have members of the public who don't understand that a condo is not the same as purchasing a single family home, and we run into agents who also don't understand. It's just not the same as purchasing a single family home.
Yeah, they're much more complicated than a single family home. And thanks for having me, Shannon, I appreciate it. So to talk a little bit about the differences between a single family residence and a condominium, the first thing that comes to my mind is the amount of home that you can afford. Because with condominiums, you have monthly association dues that are in addition to your monthly mortgage payment, where you don't have that on a single family residence. So if you have a $300 association dues per month, then that's going to pull down your purchasability by anywhere, maybe even up to 20-25%. So the first thing you want to do is, if you're looking at condominiums, is you want to make sure you talk to your lender so that they can add in the association dues to make sure that they're not overqualifying you. The other issue that we run into with condos, and I can't really say issues, but one of the other things we run into with condominiums is whether it is called a warrantable condo or a non-warrantable condo. And there are a lot of differences in the financing. So should we start talking about what constitutes as a warrantable and non-warrantable condo?
Well,
Yes, and
Well, I was just going to jump in for a second. So many buyers are FHA buyers, and so many condos are not FHA approved.
Correct.
So I guess it's important to bring up the importance of doing your homework before you fall in love with the place, to find out if it is FHA approved and what the process is in determining whether it's FHA approved or not.
Oh, that's great. I agree with you 100%. So
And warrantable and non-warrantable does not mean that you can buy a home warranty for the property.
that's correct. It doesn't mean
So
it's more.
we've ran into that a lot. That's what people think.
Correct. So
Has
let's
nothing to do with that.
let's start off with the FHA real quick. So Marie's 100% correct. If you have an FHA, if you're an FHA buyer, if you have an FHA buyer as an agent, the first thing you want to do when they're looking at condominiums and they fall in love with one is to call your lender. Give me a call so that I can look it up through a database on whether that community itself is FHA approved, because the community itself needs to be approved through FHA. And we can log into HUD's website and look at a list based on zip code and based on community names. That's really, really important, because you don't want to go too far down the road to find out that you can't buy it because it's not FHA approvable.
And very few condominium complexes are FHA approved.
That's right. And
Very few.
And really, I would tell you, and this is not all encompassing, but one of the main reasons that we find communities are not FHA approved is cost.
Mm-hmm.
It costs the association, it costs the community a lot of money to be approved FHA and stay approved FHA.
Well, it also is very time consuming for the homeowners associations. And then they came out with the spot approval, which we tried at our condos at Lakes of Cheshire when we had those. And spot approval after 60 days still couldn't get it approved. So I wouldn't bank on being able to spot approve a condo. It's either going to be FHA or not.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of an arduous process if you're looking at a one-off approval or a spot approval.
And also, at one time, I don't know if it still is in effect, is it also based on the number of rentals in that community?
It is, and that also goes to the warrantable and non-warrantable side. But yeah, that with FHA, also firewalls in between each unit is another one. But what we find with that is, there's a lot of communities in central Ohio that at one point were FHA approved and they let it expire. And that tells me that it was mostly due to costs, or to your point, maybe a lot more rentals within the community than there used to be.
Well, and you can also try to get a condo community reapproved for FHA, and after 9 months, you're still not reapproved. So some of those homeowners associations just give up on it, because some of the people that are members of the board, they're just volunteering.
Yeah.
So that's
Usually,
why a lot of it just falls
community
off
members
of.
that are volunteering.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue though, Marie, into the warrantable versus non-warrantable condos. So a non-warrantable condo, what that means in financing terms is that it is not able to be financed through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are the main investors for mortgages. That's who 90% of mortgage lenders use as their investors, is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So we follow their guidelines. So what would make a community non-warrantable, right? That's one of the biggest questions that we get often. So the biggest things that we see, and I'll just highlight a few of them, is the number of rental units within that community. If there is a saturated amount of rentals, then it is not going to be able to be sold to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, so then it becomes a higher down payment, a higher interest rate. And that's what it means when it's non-warrantable.
It's sometimes significantly higher down payment.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, exactly. It can mean the difference of a 5% down payment or a 20% down payment.
Or
in
if you're
some
looking at
cases, or-
FHA, it's 3.5 to 20.
Correct. Some of the other reasons why a community may not be a warrantable community is delinquencies on HOA dues. If there's a certain percentage of owners that are delinquent on their HOA dues, same thing, it makes it a non-warrantable condo. If one investor owns a particular amount of units, and it depends on the overall size of the community, but if we have one investor who owns, say, 40% of the units, just as an example, and rents them out, that's going to make it non-warrantable. Any litigation against the association is going to make it non-warrantable.
And in that case, so some of these, whether it's especially the litigation, we had a community here in town where you couldn't even get a conventional loan. So most times you're having to do a portfolio loan, which a lot of people have never heard of.
Yeah, and that's when a community falls into the non-warrantable category, we have to use what's called a portfolio loan. And what that means is, as a lender, we're lending our own money. So we're not selling the loan off to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We're keeping the loan ourselves. So it takes money out of our P&L, if you will, to do. So we don't like to do too many of those all at once because it does tie up a lot of money. But the most common ones that we're going to see as far as non-warrantable are going to be the delinquencies and the rentals. How many rentals are in there and how many people are delinquent on their HOA dues. That's 90%, I'd say 80% of what causes a community to be non-warrantable. Warrantable condos, in general, they can use financing just like a single family residence. They can use conventional 30-year fixed with 5% down, paying PMI, of course, but it does give a lot more flexibility to those people looking to purchase condominiums. How do we find out? That's always another question we get, and I'm sure you were thinking it. How do we find out if it's a non-warrantable condo or a warrantable condo? Up front, we typically aren't going to know unless we know off of history.
Well, and we can't even tell through the MLS because there is not a category for portfolio loans.
Yeah, right. So we're not going to know until we get into the file, and it's very nice because we see it more and more now where the sellers are providing us with all the condo documents up front, or at least earlier in the process.
Because we had that added to the purchase agreement.
That's not a bad thing. From a lender's perspective, it makes our life a lot easier.
Well,
because
and
we're
it
getting
also
the
makes
documents
the
earlier.
seller's life easier because they don't find out 30 days in that, hey, this doesn't qualify for this type of loan.
Correct.
And it also helps the buyer, so.
Yeah, and it's been a great shift so far. It just allows us to find out much earlier in the process if we're going to run into any issues with that. So what we do is we take the condo docs that we get, and then we order what's called a condo questionnaire through the association. So we're going to order what's called the condo questionnaire, and then we're going to order the master insurance policy. So every community has what's called a master insurance policy that covers.
Now, will the seller have that, or do you have to go through the association?
We
to get
typically go through the association with that. And then we get the name of the agency through the association and go directly to the agency, a lot of the times the insurance agency, to get that paperwork. But those were all, we gotta have all those pieces together to find out.
Well, and something that a seller should know is that If you do have to go get the insurance policy, sometimes there's an additional fee for that. If you have to go directly to, well, there's a website that you can get those from too. If you have to go there to get that, there's an additional fee, and there's an additional fee just to get the condo docs and to get someone to fill out that condo doc questionnaire too. So that's something that a lot of people don't know. They think, well, I'm an owner, I can just get that stuff, but you really can't.
Yeah. And
Because that condo questionnaire makes it a little more difficult.
correct, and it's up to each individual association whether they're gonna charge, or if they're gonna charge $100 or $300 for
Or
that
$750.
information. Or 750, yeah, or whatever they want to charge, I suppose, is
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. But yeah, so we're gonna order all of that stuff, Marie, right up front. And our underwriters will analyze it to make sure that it meets Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac guidelines. So the condo information is going to be underwritten itself, separate from the buyer and their credit and their income information. They're actually going to have the condo and the appraisal underwritten to make sure that it does meet the community guidelines, or meet the Fannie Mae guidelines rather.
And then we also get a lot of people who want to do a VA loan on a condo.
Mhm.
And a lot of folks assume if it's warrantable, then you can automatically do a VA loan. What determines whether or not you can do a VA loan? Because it's not an automatic, if you can go FHA, you can go VA. So what determines if it can go VA?
And that's a great question, and I'll tell you on the surface, the way that I do initially talk on the subject is, yeah, look at it as FHA, because it is a government agency. To your point, Shannon, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be able to, but they do look at the general same criteria. How many people are delinquent? How many people, how many investors are in there? How many rental units are in there? Is there any litigation? Things of that nature. I believe, and boy, I'd have to go back and confirm this, so don't quote me on this, but I also think that we do look to see how many government loans are within that community already
Okay.
when you're looking at VA.
What do you
I
think the
bet
cap
it
would
could
be on that?
I don't wanna speculate it, Marie, right now. I'd love to, if I had all the guidelines in front of me.
But I bet that would be one of the
research it.
criteria.
So there's a lot of different stuff that gets looked at for condominiums. They're a great place to live. It's an attractive alternative to single-family residences because you don't have to store your lawnmower and your snow blower and your shovels and your rakes, because the association takes care of the exterior.
Well, and so it depends. So they're not all created equal, but some of them, like the condos that we used to sell, they cover the water, sewer, the trash. Those are huge expenses, especially in Delaware County. So, that, and the condo fees were fairly reasonable at $250 a month. So if you're getting water, sewer, trash, and snow removal, and landscaping and all that stuff included, then that's a huge benefit. But if they're just gonna take care of the common area, then you gotta ask yourself if it's really worth it.
Right, and that's really what I wanted to get at also, is just the allure. So even if it's a non-warrantable condo, don't run away from it. Don't not buy the place if you love it. Just know that you're gonna have to have a little bit more of a down payment. What do they say about interest rates? You marry the house and date the rate. You can always refinance if the rates are a little higher because it's unwarrantable or non-warrantable, if rates change. But the amenities that you get, and if you're in an association or a community that has a pool, a clubhouse, the exterior maintenance, the water, the sewer.
Now we're getting bocce ball courts. Those bocce ball people are crazy.
And pickleball.
And
Or
pickleball.
that's what it is. The pickleball people
Yeah.
are crazy. They're out at 6 o'clock in the morning when 26-degree weather.
Wow.
And I'm like, why are you people playing this game?
A lot of condos are also accommodating pet owners, and they offer pet walks and pet areas, and also gardening areas. So there's just a lot of things you need to take into consideration as to what your interests are
That's
and what
right.
your needs are. It may be a perfect fit.
Yeah, and it may just give you a better quality of life because you're spending less time out mowing the lawn. I know personally I'm allergic to everything outdoors, so.
Yeah. So, but the point being, again, is don't let the warrantable and unwarrantable necessarily scare you away, but do your homework so you know what you're going into versus being surprised halfway through the process that you either have to come up with the extra 15% down payment or you're not able to purchase it once you've already invested your time and your money for appraisals and inspections. Just know what you're getting into and do your research up front.
And luckily, Our team has sold new condos, and we specialize in selling pre-existing condos.
Oh, yeah.
So we're very familiar with what we need to be on the lookout for, and we're very familiar with how to look up whether or not it's FHA. So we kind of do our homework before someone falls in love with it. So you need to find an agent who's also knowledgeable with condos as well. which
Absolutely.
We like to think we are, don't we, Marie?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's why we're doing a podcast on it, right? Because we want to make
I
sure
think it's
everybody
very
knows that
important,
this is something that we do take very seriously, and we have everybody's best interest in mind. And the sooner we can research and dig into these type of items when you're looking at a condo, the smoother their transaction is going to be.
Before they
100%
fall
of
in
the time.
love,
That's
because
right.
it's tough to walk away at that point.
Once you're emotionally
It's hard to
invested.
break up.
Yeah.
Right?